I want the Chimera portfolio, Daniel, all of it. The voice was my wife's, but the words belonged to another man. I kept my expression neutral, my hands resting on the polished mahogany of the conference table. My name is Daniel Harding. I am 47 years old, and my profession is building financial systems. For 2 decades, I have specialized in quantitative risk analysis, creating complex models of stability for a world that craves certainty. My life has been a study in finding order within chaos. Eleanor knew that portfolio was my life's work, the thing I spoke of with a craftsman's pride. She just did not understand that a life's work can also be a weapon. So I gave it to her, every last share. The meeting took place in a glass-walled office on the 32nd floor of a tower in downtown Chicago. It smelled of expensive leather and air conditioning. Eleanor sat across from me, flanked by her lawyer, a man named Alan Croft who looked perpetually out of his depth. She was wearing a new dress, a shade of blue she never wore when we were together. Her posture was rigid, a poor imitation of confidence. She recited her lines perfectly. "It represents the peak of your earning years with me," she said, her eyes flicking to a spot just over my shoulder. "I supported you while you built it. It's only fair that I'm the one who benefits from it." I did not look at her. I looked past her at the man standing by the window pretending to admire the view. Marcus Thorne. He was an investment broker, the kind of man who wore his charisma like a tailored suit. He had a great smile and a firm handshake, and he trafficked in the kind of high-risk, high-reward plays I had spent my entire career designing systems to protect against. He thought risk was a bull to be ridden. I knew it was a tide, and it always comes in. For the last 6 months he had been sleeping with my wife. He was the one who wanted Chimera. I could hear his voice in Eleanor's words. The specific legal phrasing, the confident claim on assets. Eleanor did not know what a derivative was. She could not have explained a leveraged position if her life depended on it. But here she was, demanding the most intricate and volatile portfolio I had ever constructed. A portfolio she had always dismissed as my boring number game. Daniel Croft, her lawyer, prompted. He shifted his weight, uncomfortable with my silence. Silence is a vacuum, and people rush to fill it with their own anxieties. Your wife has made a very generous offer. She will not pursue claims on the primary residence or your pension in exchange for the full contents of the Chimera account. Generous. It was a fascinating choice of words. It was like offering a man a beautiful, gleaming car without telling him the brakes were cut. I knew what they saw. They saw a quiet, passive man, a back-office analyst who lived in spreadsheets and code. They saw a man who avoided conflict, who preferred logic to emotion. They were not wrong, but they had mistaken the map for the territory. They saw the calm surface of the water, and they had no idea of the machinery working silently, powerfully, in the deep. I let the silence stretch for another 5 seconds. I saw a flicker of doubt in Eleanor's eyes. Marcus shifted his weight by the window. He was getting impatient. His arrogance was his defining flaw. He saw Chimera's 7-year record of steady, unbelievable returns and thought he had found the golden goose. He saw me, its creator, as a mere farmer, too simple to understand the value of the egg. He believed he could take it, leverage it, and squeeze even more from it. He was a taker, and the first rule of a taker is to underestimate the builder. Finally, I folded my hands. I looked directly at Eleanor, ignoring the 2 men who were now running her life. "Okay," I said, my voice was even, "you can have it." The relief in the room was a physical thing. Croft let out a breath he did not know he was holding. Eleanor's shoulders slumped, the rigid performance finally over. Marcus turned from the window, and for the first time he smiled. It was a victor's smile, predatory and absolute. He had won. He had taken my wife, and now he had taken my life's work. He thought he was stealing the crown jewels. He had no idea he was walking out of the room with a bomb. I left the lawyer's office and walked the 12 blocks to my new apartment. It was a corporate rental, sterile and impersonal. It was a place for sleeping, not for living. Back in our house, the one she was keeping, every book on the shelf was placed with intention. Every picture on the wall told a story. Here, the art was chosen by a committee. The furniture had no history. It was a perfect, empty vessel. It suited my needs. I did not turn on the lights. I sat in the dark and looked out at the city. The anger I felt was not hot. It was not the explosive, shouting anger that Marcus or even Alina would understand. It was cold, deliberate, the anger of an architect watching someone install a wrecking ball in the lobby of his finest building. The injustice was not that they had taken it was that they had taken it without understanding it. They had devalued it, they had looked at a masterpiece of interwoven risk, a symphony of cause and effect, and seen nothing but a number in a bank account. That was an insult to the work, and the work would have its revenge. I opened my laptop. The screen cast a blue glow in the dark room. I logged into my system, using a private key that was not stored on any network. I brought up the architecture of Project Chimera. To an outsider, it looked like a model of health. A diversified portfolio of blue-chip stocks, emerging market bonds, and a few carefully selected tech startups. Its public-facing returns were a steady 12% year after year, with almost no volatility. It was a miracle of modern finance. It was what had made my reputation inside my firm, Harding's black box, the one thing that never went down, but that was just the surface. That was the bait. Beneath the surface, Chimera was something else entirely. It was a theoretical exercise I had been building for 10 years. The question I had asked myself was this: could you create a portfolio that was designed to fail, but to fail so perfectly and so catastrophically that it would look like a force of nature? A financial earthquake, not just to lose its value, but to invert, to become a black hole of debt that would suck its owner dry. Every stock was hedged with a series of complex, out-of-the-money put options. Every bond was tied to a credit default swap that I had bought for pennies on the dollar from a bank in Frankfurt. The core of the system was a set of algorithmic triggers tied to three specific, seemingly unrelated market events. The first was a 2% drop in the price of Brazilian coffee futures. The second was the quarterly earnings report of a mid-sized Danish shipping company. The third was a specific currency fluctuation between the Japanese yen and the Swiss franc. Individually, these events were noise, market static, but if all three occurred within a single 72-hour window, they would activate the core programming of Chimera. The put options would become fantastically valuable. The credit default swaps would trigger. The algorithms would begin to sell, not at market price, but to execute a cascade of pre-programmed trades designed to accelerate the collapse. It was a house of cards, and the triggers were the flick of a finger on the bottom card. The system was designed so that the more money you poured into it, the more you leveraged it, the more violent the eventual explosion would be. And I knew Marcus Thorne. The man was a walking definition of leverage. He would not be able to resist. He would pour his firm's money into it. He would convince his clients to join him. His greed and his arrogance would be the fuel. Chimera would be the spark. I looked at my own long-range forecasts, the models I had built over 20 years. The convergence was coming. A seasonal dip in agricultural commodities, a predictable slump in global shipping. A currency adjustment spurred by a scheduled announcement from the Bank of Japan. All three triggers had a 94% probability of activating in the first week of November, approximately 90 days from now. The plan had not been to use it. It was an intellectual challenge, a thought experiment. But then, about 4 months ago, I started to notice the small things. The way Alina would end a phone call when I walked into the room. A credit card bill with a charge for a hotel bar across town. The scent of a cologne that was not mine on a cashmere scarf. That was when I made the change. I moved Chimera from a theoretical model to an operational one. I spent 2 weeks hardening the code, making the triggers irreversible. I moved my actual assets, my real retirement, into a simple, slow-growth trust under my father's name. I left Chimera sitting there, a beautiful, ripe fruit, waiting for someone to pluck it. I just never imagined they would ask for it so politely. A new email pinged in my inbox. The subject line was checking in. It was from Sarah Jenkins. She was a junior analyst at my firm, a sharp kid I had mentored a few years ago. She had a gift for seeing patterns. "Hi Daniel," the email read. "Heard you were taking some personal leave. Just wanted to say I hope you're doing okay. Things are strange here without you. Let me know if you need anything." I smiled, a real smile, for the first time all day. Sarah was an ally even if she did not know it yet. She represented a different set of values, competence, loyalty. the things Marcus and Alina saw as weaknesses. I typed back a short reply. Thank you, Sarah, I appreciate that. All is well, just restructuring a few things. I closed the laptop, the decision was made, the die was cast. For the next 3 months I would be a ghost, I would watch, I would wait. I would let Marcus Thorne do exactly what his character dictated he would do. He would take my masterpiece, my beautiful, intricate system of risk, and in his ignorance, he would aim it at himself and pull the trigger. He thought he was starting a new life on the foundation of my work. He was right, but it was my new life, not his. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of legal paperwork. I signed everything Croft put in front of me. I transferred the digital ownership keys for the Chimera account. I did it all with a calm efficiency that they continued to mistake for defeat. On the final day, in the lawyer's office, after the last signature, Alina tried to say something. She began, but she could not finish. There was a flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt, pity, it did not matter, it was just noise. It's done, Alina, I said, my voice flat. I wish you well. I stood up and walked out without looking back. As the elevator doors closed, I could see Marcus Thorne step up behind her and put his hands on her shoulders, a gesture of ownership. He was smiling, that same victor's smile. My phone buzzed. It was a news alert from a financial journal I followed. Thorne Capital announces record influx of investor funds. The short article quoted Marcus extensively. He talked about a new paradigm of intelligent growth strategy he was implementing. He mentioned his firm had recently acquired a unique, proprietary portfolio with a flawless performance history. He did not name Chimera, but he did not have to. I knew, his clients knew, and now the public knew. He was strapping his entire professional reputation to my bomb. I spent my days in the public library reading history. I spent my evenings at a small gym, the kind with old iron weights and no loud music. I was rebuilding brick by brick. In my mind I had a calendar. Every day I crossed one off. 89 days left, 88, 87. You and I know that real value is not loud, it is not flashy, it is quiet. It is in the work, it is in the code, the contract, the numbers no one else bothers to read. Marcus and Alina were about to learn that lesson. It was a lesson that would be taught not by me, but by the beautiful, terrible machine they had been so eager to possess. They thought they had stolen my future. They had only secured their own ruin, and I would be there to watch. The first sign that Marcus was taking the bait came a month later. It arrived not as a market report, but as a photograph in a society magazine. Alina had posted it online. Her on the deck of a yacht, a glass of champagne in her hand. The caption read, "Celebrating New Beginnings." In the background, leaning against the railing and talking to a man I recognized as a Swiss hedge fund manager, was Marcus Thorne. He looked relaxed, powerful. He was selling the story of his success, and Chimera was his proof. My ally, Sarah Jenkins, sent me the link with a one-word message: nauseating. I had lunch with Sarah a few days later. Not at a downtown restaurant where we might be seen, but at a small, family-owned diner in a neighborhood neither of us frequented. It smelled of coffee and fried onions. It felt real. He's leveraging it, she said, pushing a piece of lettuce around her plate. She did not need to say who he was. Marcus has integrated Chimera into the core of Thorne Capital's primary fund. He's using its stability rating to underwrite much riskier ventures. Energy futures, speculative biotech. It's like he's using a foundation of granite to build a skyscraper out of matchsticks. Is anyone questioning it? I asked, sipping my water. A few of the older guys in risk management are nervous, she said, lowering her voice. They can't see inside the portfolio structure, of course, only the performance data, and the data looks perfect, too perfect. One of them, a man named Henderson, said it was like finding a unicorn. He doesn't believe in unicorns. She looked at me, her gaze direct. It isn't a unicorn, is it, Daniel? This was the moment, the allies' test of faith. I could keep her in the dark, protect her with ignorance, but that was not the kind of relationship I had built with her. I had mentored her based on mutual respect for the truth of the numbers. To lie to her now would be a betrayal of my own principles. No, Sarah, I said quietly, it's not a unicorn, it's a predator disguised as a unicorn, and it's designed to hunt other predators. She did not flinch. She just nodded slowly, absorbing the information. She had suspected something was wrong, and I had just validated her instincts. That is the core of loyalty for people like us. It is not about emotion. It is about recognizing and honoring competence. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "Just watch. And when the time comes, be ready to tell people what you saw. Tell them you questioned the numbers. Tell them you trusted your training over the hype. Your reputation is your most valuable asset. Keep it clean." Her expression hardened with resolve. "And yours?" "I'm building a new one," I said. That conversation secured our alliance. Sarah became my eyes and ears inside the financial world I had left behind. She was not a co-conspirator in the act itself, but she was a validator of the principle. She was the one other person who knew the king was not just naked. He was walking into a furnace. The midpoint complication arrived on a Tuesday in late October. It was a cold, gray morning. My phone buzzed with an alert from a niche financial news service. Federal Regulatory Agency opens inquiry into obscure Danish shipper, Nordline. My blood ran cold. Nordline, the Danish shipping company, the second of Chimera's three triggers. A routine regulatory inquiry was not the same as a bad earnings report, but it was close enough to spook the market. More importantly, it was close enough to spook Marcus. If he got scared and decided to liquidate his Nordline holdings to be safe, he would unknowingly pull a single wire from the detonator. The entire system would be diffused. All that planning, all that patience would be for nothing. I saw the trade alerts in my own monitoring system less than an hour later. Thorn Capital was preparing a massive sell order for all assets connected to Nordline. Marcus was panicking. His arrogance was being eclipsed by his fear. He was about to stumble into the right decision for all the wrong reasons. I had to act, but I could not act directly. I had to reinforce his greed, to make him believe that abandoning Nordline was the act of a coward, not a prudent investor. I needed to reframe the narrative. I went to the library, not to read but to use a public computer, a machine with no connection to my identity. I created a new, anonymous email address. I spent an hour crafting a message. It was not addressed to Marcus, but to a financial blogger I knew he read. A man named Julian Vance, who specialized in maverick market analysis and prided himself on contrarian takes. The email was short and filled with just enough authentic-sounding jargon to be credible. I presented myself as a disgruntled junior analyst at a rival firm. Subject: the Nordline play everyone is missing. "Julian," I wrote, "I see everyone is panicking about the Nordline inquiry. Amateurs. What they don't see is that this is a classic corporate raiding tactic. A larger competitor is using regulatory pressure to drive down the stock price before a hostile takeover. I've seen the raw shipping manifests. Nordline's third-quarter earnings are going to be astronomical. The people who hold their nerve and buy during this dip aren't just going to double their money. They're going to triple it. Thorn Capital is holding a huge position. If Thorn has the guts to hold on, he'll look like a genius in 2 weeks. If he sells, he's just another coward who got scared by shadows." I attached a single, heavily redacted document, a fabricated shipping forecast that looked plausible enough to pass a cursory glance. It was a lie, but it was a lie wrapped in the kind of conspiracy-laden, inside scoop narrative that a man like Julian Vance could not resist. It played to his ego. I hit send. Then I deleted the account and cleared the browser history. I left the library and walked for 2 hours, my stomach in knots. It was a gamble, a desperate move. I had introduced a new variable into my own clean, calculated system. The blog post went live at 4 p.m. that afternoon. "The Nordline Trap: Why the Big Money is Lying to You." Vance had swallowed it whole. He had reprinted parts of my email almost verbatim, presenting my anonymous tip as his own brilliant analysis. He painted a picture of a Wall Street conspiracy, with Marcus Thorn as the potential hero who could defy the odds. I stayed up all night, watching the pre-market data. The sell order from Thorn Capital was still pending. My moment of doubt was a physical weight. Did I want this? Did I really want to cause this much destruction? To ruin people I did not even know who were simply clients of Marcus? The thought was a sharp, cold splinter in my mind. For a moment I considered letting it go. Let him sell, let the bomb be diffused. Then I thought of Aliner's face in that office, the rehearsed speech, the casual cruelty of it. I thought of Marcus's smile, the smile of a man who takes what he has not earned and calls it victory. This was not just about money, it was about order, it was a moral choice. They had chosen to live in a world of lies and shortcuts. I was simply holding them to the consequences of that choice. The anger returned, cold and deliberate. The doubt vanished. At 5:37 a.m., just before the market opened, the sell order was canceled. An hour later, a new set of buy orders from Thorn Capital began to appear. Not only was Marcus holding his position, he was doubling down. He was buying up the Nordline stock that others were panic selling. Vance's blog post had not just reassured him, it had stoked his arrogance. He now saw himself as the lone genius, the brave contrarian. He was buying more fuel for his own funeral pyre. I closed my laptop. The crisis was averted, the timeline was secure. The next few weeks were quiet, the calm before the storm. I finalized the plans for my own future. I used my protected assets to lease a small office space in a modest building far from the financial district. I filed the incorporation papers for Harding Risk Advisory. It was a company of one, for now. The first week of November arrived, the air grew colder, the leaves had all fallen from the trees. It felt like the world was holding its breath. On Monday morning, the first trigger was hit. A larger-than-expected harvest in Vietnam caused the price of Robusta coffee futures to tumble just over 2%. It barely made the news, it was market noise. But in the silent, hidden architecture of the Chimera portfolio, a single digital tumbler clicked into place. On Tuesday, nothing happened. On Wednesday morning, the second trigger. Nordline released its third-quarter earnings. Just as I had privately forecasted, they had missed their targets badly. The regulatory inquiry had, in fact, been legitimate. The stock price collapsed by 40% in the first hour of trading. For Marcus, it was a disaster. His brave position was now a catastrophic loss, but the real disaster was still hidden. The second tumbler in Chimera's lock had fallen. I imagined the scene at Thorn Capital. The panic, the shouting. Marcus, his tailored suit suddenly feeling too tight, his confident smile gone, replaced by the grimace of a gambler who has pushed all his chips onto the wrong number. He would be furious, humiliated, but he would think it was just a bad trade. He still had no idea that the house itself was about to collapse on him. He had one chance to save himself. He could liquidate the entire Chimera portfolio, take the massive loss on Nordline, and still walk away with a fraction of its initial value. It would be a professional catastrophe, but not a total annihilation. But his arrogance, the very flaw that had led him here, would prevent it. He would see it as admitting defeat. He would try to trade his way out of the loss to find another big win to cover the hole. He had less than 24 hours. Because my models predicted that on Thursday afternoon, the Bank of Japan would make a scheduled announcement. An announcement that would cause the yen to move. It was almost time. I sent a simple text to Sarah. Watch the currency markets tomorrow, especially USD JPY. Her reply was instant. Understood, good luck, Daniel. I did not need luck, I had maths. And math was about to deliver a cold, elegant, and final form of justice.